Welcome back, 803. This is the second half of the video, starting with question number 10. So when we left off, it was no solution, answer C for 9. And number 10 is not hard, it's just a little tricky to get sorted out. First of all, you have two rectangles here. One's name is rectangle P, and the other rectangle, I'll do it in blue, is rectangle Q. And so what I need to know about rectangle P and rectangle Q is they're different. And I am trying to find, let's see, what is my job? My job is to find J and H. So that's this letter J and this letter J and this letter H. Okay, so they give me some information. It tells me the perimeter. That means if I count up all the way around, is 20 inches for P, and for Q it is 30 inches. And if I look at each side, it gives me some information about the sides. So for P, if this side is H, I know this side is also H. If this side is J plus 4, I know this side is also J plus 4. So to come up with my two equations, I add up all the sides. So I take the sides, and this is the equation for the first one. I know if I add them all up, it's going to equal 20. So 2 times J plus 4, so that's this J plus 4, and I have two of them, so 2 times J plus 4 plus 2H, because I have an H here and an H there. I know that all of those things have to equal 20. So then I have a little bit of algebra work here to do, and I end up, after I combine some like terms, my equation is 12 equals 2J plus 2H. Okay, that's great. That is for P. So I have one equation, and I've combined all my like terms. Now I have to go over to Q and do the exact same thing for Q. So if I were you, I would pause a minute, stop the video, and try to do it yourself, and then come back and look at the answer. Okay, welcome back. So once again, on this side, I have J plus 1. So if this is J plus 1, this is also J plus 1. And I have, mixing my colors up today, if this is 3H, then this is also 3H because my sides are equal. And what I know about Q is if I add up J plus 1 plus J plus 1 plus 3H plus 3H, this time I get 30. So here's my equation. Oops, sorry about that. Hope you don't get dizzy. Okay, so 30, the perimeter, equals 2 times 3H plus 2 times J plus 1. And all of that equals 30. Then again, I just have some algebra to do. I'm going to have to distribute this to this, 2 to the J and 2 to the 1. When I distribute these out, 30 still equals 6H plus 2J plus 2. Take a minute, make sure you've got that right. Then you're going to combine a bunch of like terms. So I'm going to subtract the 2 from both sides. When I subtract the 2 from both sides, I end up with this 2 being eliminated, and then 30 minus 2 is 28. 6H plus 2J. Now I am going to bring over this equation from P. I'm going to bring it over here, so see if I can get rid of one of my equations. So I have 12 equals 2H plus 2J. I just changed the terms. Now this time, in order to get rid of the 2J's, I'm going to have to subtract. Okay, when I subtract, I have to distribute that negative sign throughout the equation. So I'm subtracting the 12, I'm subtracting the 2h, and I'm subtracting the 2j. So we use this elimination. My 2j's cancel, and I'm left with 16. 28 minus 12 is 16 equals 4h. And I can disregard the 0. Divide both sides by 4, and I get h equals 4. I do a quick check of my answer choices, and I can see that I have a couple. This I can eliminate, and this I can eliminate, but I have 2 that are 4s, which means I'm going to have to go back in and figure out what j is. So I take my 4, and I can substitute it in either equation. If I substitute it in 12 equals 2j plus 2 times h, put the 4 in, then I have 2j plus 8 equals 12. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides, and I'm left with 4 equals 2j. Divide both sides by 2, and j equals 2. So the correct one of these is going to be C. Okay, on to our last problem, second to last problem. In this case, let's see if you can see the top of it. It's a word problem where I'm going to have to make an equation. So it says the amount of revenue in dollars that Jason receives from selling X posters is given by the equation, and they just give me the equation. I don't have to think about it. So the equation is y equals 4x. The cost of producing the posters is given by the equation y equals 1/2 x plus 280. So in this case, they give me both equations. And what I really have to figure out is the break-even amount, meaning how many posters would I have to sell in order to break even from the cost of producing it. So on the sheet, you'll see he spends 1/2 x plus 280 to make the poster, and I put those two things together. So what do I mean by that, put them two together? Y equals 4x is one equation. The second equation is y equals 1/2 x plus 280. And I set those two things equal to each other. So I have step 1, 4x equals 1/2 x plus 280. So that is my first job, is to put the equations equal to each other. Then I have this annoying half here. So I'm thinking to get rid of the half, I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 2. So I multiply the left side by 2, I multiply the right side by 2. 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times 1/2 x is just x, so I have 8x equals x, and then I have to multiply the 2 times the 280, I get 560. Now I simply combine like terms. By doing that, I subtract x on both sides. I'm left with 7x equals 560. If I divide both sides by 7, it's nice and neat. My answer is Jason has to sell $80, or he has to produce $80, 80 posters for his for him to break even. Again, sorry about the dollars. The number of posters, he has to produce 80 posters in order to break even. Question number 12. Okay, so disregard the writing on number 12. I didn't have a clean copy. But what it's asking me to do is to graph and label the given system of equations on the coordinates. The reason that I use this, for reasons that I do not understand, many of you drew two parallel lines as your equations. That could not possibly be right for the simple reason, if I look up here, they both have different slopes. One has a slope of 1 and one has a slope of 1/2, so they could not possibly be parallel to each other. So if you drew this, I don't know why, please let me know. I would be very interested to know. So let's just do this one together because this whole skill is incredibly important. If I look on this equation, the first thing I'm going to do, let's do equation 1 in red. If I do this one in red, then I look first for my y-intercept, which is 2. So my y-intercept is 2 right here. Then my slope is 1/2. That means I'm going to rise 1 and I'm going to run 2. So from my y-intercept, I rise 1, and this is already 2, so you have to be a little tricky. So rising 1 is halfway in between. But if I run 2, I go all the way over here. So there's my first point. I'm going to rise 1 and run 2. Second point. Rise 1, run 2. Rise 1, run 2. So you can see that my line is looking something like this. But make sure when you draw your line that you actually go through at the intercept. So here's my line. My first line is in red. Now I'm ready to move to my second line. And I'm going to do that one in blue. So my second line is y equals x minus 1. So again, step 1 is to graph the y-intercept. The y-intercept in this case is -1. So it's not exactly here in the 2, it's halfway in between. Here's my y-intercept for my second line in blue. Now I have a slope of 1 because there's no coefficient at the x. That means there's a 1 there. So in this case, I'm going to rise 1 and run 1. So because this is by 2's, I'm going to go up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1. So I'm getting a different line, but it's going to look like basically running parallel here. And I know where this approximately is going to land, but in your sketch, you had to sketch 2 completely different lines, and their point of intersection is going to be at 6 and 5, where x is equal to 6 here, and y is equal to 5. That's my point of intersection. A second way that you could have done this is set those 2 equations equal to each other, and you would have found the point of intersection of being 6 and 5. So determine the solution to the systems below. This is question number 13. Make sure you can see it. Determine the solution to the systems. In this case, you're going to have to use substitution. So I want to, first of all, set one equation equal to get my x by itself. Once I've gotten my x by itself, I substitute it back in here, and then I solve for y. Once I find that y is equal to 2, I take the 2, I substitute it back into either equation, and I end up with 7. So I know I went through that one pretty fast, but it's just a lot of algebra legwork. But that should have been your answer. X is 7 and y is 2. We've got to be getting to the end here soon. Yes, a consumer, and this is a very typical problem that you'll see on a standardized exam, including the ACT and SAT. Disregard the answers here, those are not correct. We're going to work this out. A customer is comparing different text message plans at Cellular Bargains. So I know right away I'm going to have 2 companies. One is called Cellular Bargains, and he wants to find out which allows the most text messages for the same cost. The second one is Pay Per Text, which charges $10 per month and 10 cents. So we're going to see which one is actually the cheapest. So for each text message, write a function that models this plan. So in this case, we have a line that's already driven for us for the first one. So in the first one, the cellular bargains, this one is frequent text plan. So frequent text plan